Ukraine has threatened to attack Russia's Victory Day parade in Red Square, and Kyiv has signed a minerals deal with America, paving the way for more US military aid. Kyiv again. My name is Jerome Starkey. I'm the defence editor at The Sun newspaper, and this is Frontline, your weekly roundup of the most important news from the war in Ukraine. We're starting with President Zelensky's comments that Ukraine could attack Russia's Victory Day parade in Red Square on May 9th. This was a response to President Putin's offer of a paltry 3-day ceasefire over May 8th and 9th. Those dates are significant because it is Victory in Europe Day. It's the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe. So countries across Europe will be celebrating, commemorating, and of course on May 9th, an important date in Russia's calendar, Russia marks the end of World War II in Europe, a day after the rest of Europe, and it traditionally marks it with an annual military parade through Red Square. Soldiers marching in formation, all kinds of nuclear-capable missiles and tanks rumbling past the Kremlin. What was once a big display of Russia's military prowess, although it's been significantly diminished in recent years because so much equipment has been lost and/or sent to the front lines. Now, this is important. Putin offered a 3-day ceasefire. It appeared to be a gesture of goodwill. The Kremlin said he was motivated by humanitarian concerns. It put the ball in Ukraine's court. It appeared to present Russia as the party in this conflict willing to make peace. But Ukraine's response was very telling. They echoed American demands for a full 30-day ceasefire in the air, on the land, and at sea in order for substantial peace talks to make progress. And Ukraine's point is this: Russia announced a similar unilateral ceasefire over the Easter weekend, but Ukraine then recorded thousands of violations of that ceasefire. It was effectively meaningless, certainly for the soldiers on the front line. There was a lull in the overnight air, missile, drone bombardments which have hammered Ukraine, but the second it was over, we saw one of the largest in the war directed at the capital, Kyiv. So Ukraine's response is that this is tokenism, this is gesture politics. What they want is a meaningful ceasefire. Of course, that parade also significant because we're expecting to see China's President Xi Jinping as a guest of honor, and there's also been footage shared on social media appearing to show Chinese soldiers rehearsing for that parade, marching through Moscow. A show by Russia of its international alliances as the sort of geopolitical alignments reach a crunch point, with America oscillating between Donald Trump appearing very sympathetic to Russian demands, Russian envoys appearing to cozy up to President Putin and the Kremlin, and of course now a possible shift in the other direction as this minerals deal with Ukraine is signed. The deal has been a source of tension and opportunity ever since President Trump came into power. He approached this at the very beginning of his second presidency as an opportunity to try and recoup what he claimed were the hundreds of billions of dollars that America has poured into Ukraine to support it in its war against Russia. First of all, Ukraine rejected the numbers that Donald Trump was bandying about, and subsequently they have also managed to negotiate the fact that this will not be about repaying America for its gifts, because so far up to this point in the last 3 years of war, the military aid given to Ukraine was given to Ukraine. It wasn't loaned. There was never any suggestion that that would have to be repaid. But what this does enable is that from this point forward, future military contributions from America to Ukraine will be treated as investments in a joint investment fund. And that would effectively give America a stake, which it can then attempt to recoup from Ukraine's natural resources. Now, Dmitry Medvedev, former Russian president, pro-Putin, hard right, blowhard, has claimed Ukraine is effectively selling itself out, selling its natural resources in order to stay in the fight. But a significant development that this has been agreed after weeks of very months even of very fraught negotiations. Indeed, that agreement was supposed to be signed when President Zelensky visited Washington, met President Trump and his Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio in the Oval Office for that meeting, which ended in tatters with Zelensky getting ambushed by the American officials. It appears that for the time being, peace talks have stalled. Russia has been claiming that it's ready to make peace, but reiterating its demands, its constant demands, which amount to Ukraine's capitulation. They want Ukraine to be a neutral state, for its armed forces to be disarmed, for Russia to maintain all of the occupied territories which it has captured this far, and to rule out Ukraine's hopes of ever joining NATO. The next thing to talk about today is a new investigation which has laid bare the scale of Russian torture in a network of prisons, both in sovereign Russia and in occupied parts of Ukraine, where thousands of civilians and military prisoners of war have been held. Now, this is a project known as the Victoria Project, named after Ukrainian journalist Victoria Yashina, who was captured, tortured and killed by Russian forces. Indeed, part of this investigation revealed that when her body was returned, her eyes, her brain and her trachea were missing, which, horrific abuse, evidence also many broken bones, evidence that she had been horrifically abused in Russian captivity. But this appears far from unusual. And this joint investigation, which was carried out by some 45 journalists from Le Monde, Der Spiegel, The Washington Post, The Guardian, so internationally respected world newspapers, among others, revealing that actually this is widespread, but it identifies a prison in the Russian city of Taganrog as one of the worst places where this torture takes place. Torture techniques including electric shocks, beatings with wooden and metal hammers, and ritual humiliation. There are also fresh reports today by the Institute for the Study of War that Russian soldiers continue to execute Ukrainian prisoners of war, and suggestions by the ISW that this appears to be clearly and categorically sanctioned by the Russian chain of command. The final thing I'm going to mention today is an alarming report from the exiled Russian oligarch Mikhail Khodorkovsky, claiming that Russia's GRU, Military Intelligence Service, has ordered its agents to gather information about MPs and journalists across Europe. He said they are compiling a hit list and that there is an immediate threat of action. That is something we will keep a close eye on moving forward. As ever, if you have any questions, please do ask them in the comments below, and we'll endeavour to answer as many as we can next time, either on the next show or I will get into the comments myself and answer them there. We've got 3 comments for today. Number 1. Should the West use frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine, to arm Ukraine, or to fund the reconstruction of Ukraine? It's a really good question. I think the simple answer is yes, they should certainly use that as a threat which they're prepared to follow through on in order to force Russia to the negotiating table. Because for all Putin's warm words about wanting peace, we haven't yet seen any significant gestures that Russia is serious about ending this conflict, and money talks. These frozen Russian assets at the moment are being used as collateral again to pay off loans which Ukraine's allies have given to Ukraine for military aid. So the interest on these frozen Russian assets is servicing loans from Ukraine's partners, including the United Kingdom. Those assets, though, remain technically Russian, and the idea is that when the conflict ends, when sanctions are lifted, that money will be released and returned to Russian control. There is debate among Ukraine's allies about how exactly to use this. Certainly it's something Ukraine wants. It could be a lever to exert pressure, that more pressure clearly needed, I would argue, to get substantial movement on the Russian side. Second question. somebody saying Ukraine is losing, Ukraine can't win, rather, was the way they phrased this. Why are they still fighting? Well, the simple answer is Ukraine has no choice. If Ukraine stopped fighting, they would be, Russia would roll over the rest of the territory, take control of the government. Ukraine would cease to exist as a sovereign nation. Ukraine is fighting for its survival. This is not a war of choice for Ukrainians. This is a war of survival. And the analogy I would perhaps use is if somebody had kicked down your front door and you found yourself fighting with them in the hallway to protect your family, would you stop fighting simply because the attacker was landing more punches on you than you were on them, and that you felt you were, going to lose this fight? No, of course not. You would continue to fight for as long as you could until you could come up with a way of saving the lives of your family. Ukraine is fighting for its survival. That's what it amounts to. The soldiers on the front are fighting for husbands, wives, children, parents back home. Final question. Where are the F-16s and the French Mirage jets? Well, we don't see a lot of them in terms of the footage, but we do know they're being used. Ukraine only this week has reported how both types of jets, the F-16s and the Mirages, have been used to shoot down Russian missiles and drones in some of the most recent overnight bombardments. They are being used. We know, of course, that F-16s have been lost. We haven't heard yet of any Mirage jets being lost, but they are part of Ukraine's defence. Thank you very much for watching. As ever, if you've got any questions, do ask them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can next time. We're in a Ukrainian armoured vehicle and we're heading towards the Russian border.